So every type of map has a purpose. And the purpose of political maps is to show something called governmental boundaries. Governmental boundaries. And what that means is it might show the boundaries of countries. So where the United States is and where Canada is. There's some kind of line or boundary that divides our countries. And so a map would represent something like that, a political map. It might show where different states are. So that helps us know where Wisconsin is versus Minnesota, or Iowa, or Illinois. And this is on the website too, so if you want to write it down, you can, but you can always go back to the website and see it. It also might show us different counties or cities in different borders. So where Waukesha is versus Pewaukee or Brookfield. A lot of times on political maps, there's the locations. There will be different styles of dots for different major cities. So in a map of the United States, a lot of times they include capitals, but they also include major cities or big important cities. So if you looked at a map of the United States, we would probably see Madison, because that's our state capital. But what's a big city that is almost always included? When you see Wisconsin on the map,
Wisconsin.
Madison might be there, and what else? Casey. Milwaukee. Milwaukee is a very well-known city, especially in the Midwest. So that's often represented on political maps of the United States. You might also see significant or large important bodies of water or landforms represented by small symbols. And a lot of times they also include major roadways like interstates or highways, things like that. There's a link I want to show you. We'll kind of hop back and forth between an example of an interactive map from National Geographic, and we'll look at each of the features. So I want to show it to you quickly now, and then we'll come back to it after we look at each of the individual features. So this is a website, National Geographic, which you guys might be familiar with. And they have a collection of different types of maps. And this is a really cool interactive map. It's a political map, too. It is a map of the United States. And one of the first things I notice when I look at it, and maybe you notice it too, is it's pretty colorful, right?
This one's there's physical, political, whatever.
Yep, there's different along the sides, yeah, absolutely. Do you notice the different colors? Kind of like different shapes and colors and things happening? What do each of those colored spaces represent? So like here I see there's like a purple square and there's kind of like this yellow blob here and a green thing down here. What are those things? What are they? Matt?
They're states.
They're states. And the reason they're so brightly colored is to make it really easy for us as users to identify the different areas. So each state has its own area that belongs to that state. So it's really easy for me to look at Wisconsin and find it immediately and see where the borders are from Wisconsin. We'll come back to this in a minute. So thinking about the purpose, let's talk a little bit more about the key features of political maps, or things that they almost always use. And they almost always use that colorful elements that we just saw or just noticed. And they use bright colors to help the user identify different borders or areas. And this map is a little bit different, more simple. There's bright colors though, so you can quickly identify the borders. And you can see like this area is gray over here. Do you know what this country is?
Canada.
Down here there's a gray area. Yeah. So you can tell quickly where the United States is a country where our borders are. But then you can also see the different states and their borders very easily and clearly because the colors are so bright. Other examples of color use might be things like rivers or major roadways. And so this is a very simple map and doesn't include those things, but if we look back to the National Geographic, and if we zoom in, so here's Nebraska. Do you see these red lines? What do you think those represent? Major roadways. And so there might be different colored states, but all of the roadways, they're all going to be red. It would be really confusing if some roads were purple and some were green and some were pink. wouldn't know what that would mean as a reader. So all of those roadways are going to be the same color. And they're red on this map, but they might be black or white or something else on a different map. But they're always going to be the same or consistent. If you look closely too, I don't know if you'll see them that well. Do you see these little white squiggly lines? What do you think those represent? Melos. Not street names. That's a good guess though. There's something different. This one is called I can't see the names now. What if I said we have one in Waukesha called the Fox River? Those white lines represent rivers. And even though they're different rivers, they're all represented with white lines so that we as readers know that all of those white lines represent the same things. They're all rivers. How many of you have seen or used a compass rose? You've probably all seen them before. And all good maps have them. Because if I'm looking at a map like this, I need to know which direction is north versus south, east or west. Because I could read the map this way, but if I didn't know which direction was which, I might read it this way. And it would mean something totally different to me. So this is a good way for map creators and map readers to communicate. So I know that this map, in order to be read accurately, needs to be this way. If I read it this way, it wouldn't mean the same things to me. So that's kind of a way to orient ourselves as readers. And sometimes they look different. A lot of times they'll have the 4 cardinal directions, so north, east, south, west. But sometimes they're a little bit different. You might see some that are more detailed, more decorative, kind of like this one looks kind of fancy. Some of them will just be 4 simple arrows, very straight and to the point, with north, south, east, and west. Or you might see like this one where they have directions like south, east, or northwest in the middle of those 4 cardinal directions. All good maps have something called either a key or a legend. And they mean the same thing, they're just different names for the same idea. And those maps with keys or legends, they use those to explain what each symbol within that particular map represents. And they usually show a small picture of the symbol and then have some text next to it. So right here, this kind of little blue blob. Kind of hard for you to read, but what do you think this symbol represents?
Lake.
It's a lake, and if I wasn't sure right here, it tells me lakes. These red lines right here, for this particular map, that represents highways.
Oh.
Oh, because on a different map, maybe this would be a different color. But having a map key or legend lets readers know that on this map, this will always be highway. On a different map, they might use a different color line, but that tells us on this particular map, these symbols represent these things. And they'll be consistent or the same throughout that entire map. And then the last thing that's really important to include on all of your maps, or a tool that will help you read a map, is something called a scale. We talked a little bit about that during our discussions today.